Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Y Factor Leadership Unlocked. I'm your host, Spencer Collier. I'm really glad you're here. Many factors came into starting this podcast. Those factors that influenced my leadership type and skills are based off of four main factors: my faith as a Christian, being a husband, being a father, and being a coach. Leadership is one of those things that can totally change your life and the lives around you. It's not just about having a title or running a team. It's about helping people grow, pushing them through challenges, and learning about yourself along the way. I've been lucky enough to be a part of many kinds of teams and all over the past 20 years. I started with coaching an elementary age soccer, a team of girls, and now I and leading a group of about 250 adults who not only lead other adults, but also lead community members and kids along the way in their jobs. All through it all, one thing was clear: there's no one right way to lead. Everyone has their own style, their own story, and their own lessons learned. And that's what this podcast is all about: hearing from people across different businesses and walks of life, learning how they've approached leadership. Today's special to me specifically, as it's my first episode. And I thought no better way to start it by bringing in someone who's impacted my journey as a leader, and that's Bernt King. We're going to talk about what leadership means to him, his ups and downs, everything in between. And so I just want to get to it. So hello, Bernt. I just want to say thanks for joining me. You have impacted my life drastically. I know it's feels like and is like a long time ago when we first met, which was now, whew,
Don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say it. Don't
I
say it.
think it's now 16 years ago, I want to say.
Wow.
Um, 16 years ago that we first interacted, and just been able to see a lot of differences in both of our lives when we've changed. I was an innocent freshman and sophomore in college, knew nothing except I thought I knew everything. And the Lord drastically brought you in my life for a great time, and you pulled me in and adopted me almost as a second son, since you only have one. You got blessed with three other girls, and we'll talk a little bit about that too. But just wanted to start with like our connection,
Yeah.
your first thoughts of when we, because you were in a season of life too of craziness
Mhm.
back
Yeah.
then, and start from that. So, yeah, so 16 years ago, we run the clock. I come into your crazy office,
Yeah.
and you're doing what in your career at that point?
Yeah. You happened to cannonball into my life right into a season where, yeah, there were a lot of things shifting and changing in my life. There was a lot of confusion around, like, I thought I was pretty clear on what the Lord had for me and what I was supposed to be doing. But none of it was really going the way I wanted it to go. And there were lots of things in that season that were really, really good. But I think I was right on the cusp of like really wrestling through, um, like, yeah, what is my life going to be about, and how am I going to navigate in these days? So you, my friend, were a breath of fresh air where I could just sit and engage and talk about who God is, and a little bit about life and direction and some leadership stuff in there, I suppose. So yeah, you were a great encouragement to me in that season.
So we know what you're talking about, but what was your position at that time?
So I had left one school to come to another, which is the one that you were a student at. And when I did that, I knew that it was a direction that the Lord had for us. So there's the long backstory. I won't get into all of it, but we were just really mindful of the fact that we knew a change needed to happen. We just weren't sure what it was going to look like. We were praying actively that God would move and open a door. And He opened a door at the school you were a student at. And it was the only door that God opened in a long season of searching and praying. And so there were lots of things about that school that really good. And it just wasn't what I had envisioned for myself. And some of it had nothing to do with the school itself. Some of it was just the location. Like I grew up in Europe. And so there was nothing about Lancaster, Pennsylvania in particular that was like, hoo, I want to live there. And so taking the role was a role of, on a career, from a career perspective, the shift didn't make sense. From a location, it didn't really make sense. From a nature of what we were going to be doing or thought we'd be doing, it wasn't really going to make sense. And then, and yet at the same time, it was like, I don't know that we can continue to pray and then decline when an opportunity comes our way. It's kind of like that, someone gets stranded on an island, they're praying like, God, rescue me from the island. And then they eventually die and they go to heaven, and they're like out while they're praying, like a ship comes by and they're like, no, God's going to rescue me. Or a helicopter swoops in, no, God's going to rescue me. And then they die and they go to heaven. And they're like, why didn't you rescue me? And he's like, well, I sent a boat, I sent a helicopter. What do you want me to do? So for us, it was very much of a move of obedience, but there was lots about it that was really challenging. And I think, so I knew that we took the role, we came to the school, we came with the intent to just be obedient to what God had. But things, it was tough. There was a tough season.
What was the role, the title?
Title was, I was to be director of leadership development. So I was to work with students and in the development of their leadership as they were there. And the challenge was, from the very beginning, it was a great idea, but there wasn't a lot of synthesis amongst the community as to exactly what it should look like. And so some folks thought it looked like this, and some people thought it should look like that. And it became a real struggle to try to navigate what it's actually going to look like. And yeah.
So you went from, and I'm going to throw out locations, and this is comical why we're talking. Sure. So you went from sort of living in the Alexandria area and Northern Virginia area, right?
Yeah, we were on the Maryland side, but
the Maryland side,
but DC in general.
We won't bring that up anymore. So, but you were over there, and then you got accepted this job, yep, right, which is in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Yep.
And literally in title, you were supposed to be leading kids that thought they knew what they were doing. At least when I came in, was talking more about leading kids, not only leading each other, but leading in service, leading in community,
and leading
so that's
yourself.
why. Yeah. So that's where I came into your office, because I was like, hey, I want to do something. I've been going to this it was Rainbow's End at the time, but a community center essentially for teens to hang out with and communicate and just be amongst young adults or older adults to be able to mentor them.
Yeah.
And we start out our relationship that way, right? And I thought it was funny as we continue in our story here in the next 16 plus years. You keep saying we, so another factor is Bernt at that time, and still at this time, is married to a wonderful woman, Ginger. She's fantastic.
Yeah.
And my wife was like, why don't we live closer to them? I said, well, that's not what the Lord has us. So unfortunately, you're not going to be able to hang out with her on often. And you have 4 awesome children. At the time, I think they were maybe high school and elementary school. It was pretty big spread.
Time, I think our youngest was like 4.
Yeah, and he just basically flown off the steps and broken some arms at that time at some point. Thinking he could fly. Anyway, so I found it interesting how you're approaching this, because I know you and I discussed at that time and even after, like how the Lord affected this situation and this time.
Yeah.
And you're still doing it, even though you and I have talked. You're still leading. You were leading kids and young adults at that time. I say kids, but because we acted like it. And now you're leading a church of how many people?
I don't know. I think maybe on a non-snowy weekend, I think there might be a few hundred people that show up here.
And that's just on Sunday though, right? And obviously you're a pastor, so people are constantly, you're helping them in finding what the Lord has for them and what the Lord's trying to teach them. And so you even stated there, like, hey, you're at my college, you're not sure about where you're supposed to be, but this is where the Lord wants you right now at that time. How do you, because I know I have several people underneath me in my current role, like, know that that's where the Lord has you. You're not necessarily content with it, right? But you're still having to lead people through it.
Yeah.
So how is that going on in your mind during those 2-3 years that you were there? Because obviously I'm sure Ginger could probably tell us different stories about it, but for you.
Yeah. I mean, I would say for the first, so that role for me at that school lasted 18 months.
Man, it felt longer.
After 18 months, they eliminated the initiative. There wasn't enough agreement on what it was and where it was going. And I was laid off after 18 months. So I would say the first 12 the first 9 months, everything was new, and I loved the idea of engaging with students. I mean, anybody who's in student development or student services of any kind knows that you get into it because you love being with students. You don't really get into it because you love policy or because you love, I don't know, or the cafeteria. It's not so, you get into it, you enjoy doing that. So I was just really, so I think part of it was like focusing on the things that we were able, like there was lots of things to be thankful for. There were several things that didn't make sense, several things that were hard if I let them. But I say with the first 9 months, then you're in transition and you're just focused on what's good. We get a chance to engage with people around things that are important. The other stuff that we've been praying about along the way, like saw God read. One of the reasons why we knew we needed to make a change was because Ginger and I were not on a great long-term trajectory. Our relationship was fine, but we knew if we continued, we were in a situation, for example, where we'd been on like 5 dates in 2 years. And it was like, we can't keep doing this. Like, we're fine in the moment, but you fast forward and it's just going to be a train wreck. So all of a sudden, we made this change and we were like, wow, like Babes and I have lots of time together. Like it was so good. And the same thing, kids, like I wasn't, because of the nature of the work I was doing, there was a lot of things competing for my attention and I didn't manage that really well. And so, hey, here's a reset. And I get a chance to engage with my kids and try to merge my working world in with my home life in a healthy way. And so really focusing on those things, I'd say the first 9 months were really positive, even though there was a lot of like behind the scenes stuff. The next year, I would just say was really hard because it was more than just, because now in the back of my mind, some of my goals for my life and my expectations for my life were getting unwound. And that year, and there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that happening. Some I knew about, some I didn't. There was a lot of,
and we're talking in your workplace. This is happening.
Yeah. So this would have been like the first 9 months. You ask, how did you manage it? First 9 months, it wasn't a problem. The next year after that first 9 months, so maybe the next 10 months. So first 9 months, good. The next 10 months, pretty rough. Still too much. First 9 months, maybe the next.
It's okay. Math isn't. You have to have math in leadership. It's okay.
So I'm not a math guy. So maybe first 9 months, good. The next 7, that sounds better. Those were rough. But I'd find myself coming back to, man, the stuff that matters the most is fine. And the stuff that we prayed over and we're so concerned about is doing great. And so for us in that season, so if you add 9 and 7, you get to 16. Those months, that's kind of what got us through, and all of that was just keeping ourselves coming back to that. Now the last 2 months and then the next 4 were some of the darkest nights of my soul. So that's another conversation altogether, I suppose. But I don't know if that helps, but that's kind of the way.
Yeah. So on a leadership perspective too, like, hey, you're leading probably at the time, probably 300 to 500 students, depending on every week, right? That are either interacting with you or interacting with leaders that you're leading. And then, so the first months, obviously you've got, just an awesome, that's why I was pulled to your aroma and energy when you're talking to people. And that's why I think people initially come to you. I mean, backstory, guys, Bernt's also like, I feel like 10 inches taller than me, even though he's not, but I can't even attempt to even try to play basketball with him because he would probably just hover over me, even though that's not necessarily his sport. He would say, if any sport is his. But the aspect of your personality, I know as a leader now, especially of over about 250 people myself, is so you're having a rough 2 months or 7 months or whatever.
Yeah.
You're obviously not sharing that information with all student body or any student body other than probably myself, because of our relationship at the time, and just still leading with like grace with other people, like constantly. No one has a clue that you're going through this dark time, and then obviously probably your wife and myself, but just being able to lead in such a awesome manner, and obviously that a lot of that was God's doing, but some of it is still, like, we talk about it all the time, and with my community group, like, God's doing something, but you're still frustrated as all get out, and you don't know what direction is happening. And it was funny, I was talking to, probably laugh, but he's like, hey, he stated, you think you have a plan? And then God's like, wait, hold my beer. And like, I got you. Like, don't worry about it. I thought that was a hysterical comment. But essentially going off of that, right? I feel like in general through my experience, and this is why I brought you on the show, is like you really have been an example of how to lead through great times and things you're passionate about, and lead in times where you just really aren't wanting to necessarily be there, even though you really enjoy that work,
Hmm.
right? So you learned that from somebody. So I just was wondering too, like, what would you say is your leadership style, and like, who influenced you on in that like impact of how you lead as you're leading? Because obviously we change, and we'll talk about this. We change your style changes as over time, but depending on who you're leading and so forth. But like, who would you say has made the most influence on you in just how you lead?
Well, I'm going to I'll give you an answer, but I think one of the things I mean, there's lots of people that God has used in my life along the way where certain things they would talk about or certain things they would say have stuck with me, and they've been sort of brilliant contributions to my life. But the cohesiveness of all of that really is the gospel. Like the gospel work in my life really is whatever resilience exists in my life is fundamentally because I'm a little stubborn, but the idea that Jesus has got something for this in me. And so like if there's something for me in this journey, like I want to make sure I'm tuned into what that is, and I don't want to miss that. And I think for me, a lot of those seasons. So if we skip to the end, we started getting to the end of that run at the college, and 2 years, the last 2 months they were hard. But I think the biggest problem with the last 2 months, at the very core of it, the issue was my vision for my life is not happening. I don't know what Jesus is doing, and I'm angry. I'm angry at Jesus. Like, what are you doing with my life? This is the plan I had. This is the route we were on. Everything was going really, really well. What are you doing? So, they shut down the initiative. We were laid off. I ended up clearing a poison ivy patch not long from here because it was the only work I could find. I went from there to tobacco harvesting here in Lancaster County because it's the only job I could find. So I'm literally in a tobacco field by myself, just spitting mad at the fact that God is train wrecking my career. What are you doing? And then we started getting to the end of that. So I think Jinder and I, in that season, we knew, because we've seen it in negative ways in other people. We went on what we just started calling it a better, not bitter campaign. Like, this stuff is either going to make us better or it's going to make us bitter. And I've experienced people who are holding on to bitterness over things that have occurred in their life. And it destroys them. Like, it doesn't actually help anybody. It's a really painful thing to write. And so we've been around people like that. Had some family members who sort of live life that way. And we just thought that can't be healthy. That can't be good. So we literally, the Better Not Bitter campaign for us was rehearsing regularly. Here's what we're seeing Jesus doing that's really, really amazing. So, for example, that poison ivy patch, as awful as that was, or the tobacco harvest, as hard as that was, like, God has made provision. Like, we're so grateful for that. The lowest part is at the end of that tobacco season, literally questions like, Lord, what am I going to do? Like, I don't print money. I can't force people to hire me. Like, what am I going to do? And God, the only door he opened was to come on staff at a church, which is just the worst. I mean, on so many levels. Like, I've been avoiding this thing my whole life. This is a terrible idea. Nobody wants me on staff at a church. I don't want to be on staff at a church. This thing's a man eater. I've watched it so many times. And so this is just a terrible idea. And somewhere in there, the pastor of this church that I was hired at, so gracious, he was like, we'll just take you for a year. It'll be fine. Like, maybe something will open up. And so I was like, well, I can do it for a year. And then that year, I kept applying to get back into education. And the Lord shut every door, and it was painful. Year one, I think it was like 46 applications. Year two, it was like 44. By the end of year two, like, I was just exhausted. Couldn't keep trying to fight for a dream I had that clearly God wasn't moving in. So those 2 years, they were tough in the sense that, you're trying to show up and lead people. So now you're showing up in a space where you're leading people, and you're leading people through music or whatever else is happening. But inside, you're just so like, God, what are we doing? Like, I can't believe this is my life or whatever. And yet all that work that Ginger and I had done through that Better Not Bitter campaign, all those things were still true. Like, Babes and I were in a great place. Bills are paid. Kids are in a great place. we've got relationships with people that are really healthy and good. And so what are you really this upset about? And the truth is, this is just the honest truth. I was losing my dream for my life. And I don't know how, one of the things that's changed in my life since 16 years ago when you and I sat around talking about highfalutin things is I think for the first time in that season, I encountered calling. All of a sudden, as I'm reading through the scriptures, I would discover like Moses, who God's like, who's whatever, 80 years old, and God's like, hey, it's time to go back to Egypt and free the nation of Israel. And Moses is like, that's a really bad idea. I don't want to do it. And I thought, I felt that. Like I'm not Moses. I don't pretend to be, but I know exactly how that feels. Like this is my life. And then I started reading about Paul, who, we don't have a lot documented about his 3 days of blindness before that's happening. But here's a guy who's trained to lead Jewish people. And you're going to come out of this time and go, let's go reach the Gentiles. I'm sure Paul is like, that's a really bad idea. Or again, over and over and over again. And yet, so I felt like, wow, I think God has clearly said, or by the closing of all these doors and applications, is it possible that this is my calling? All of a sudden, it was like, if it is, because again, the stuff we're most concerned about in life, the stuff we're praying for, the stuff we're worried about, it's all fine. So then I think that was a big shift for me in terms of like, I'm going to step into this calling. And I think for me, that released a level of joy in leadership that I had not experienced in probably 5 or so years prior to that, just because there was so much else wrestling through in my head about career, thoughts, and what we're going to be doing. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think for me, that Better Not Bitter campaign was a big thing the Lord had us on. And I think when it came to leadership stuff, trying to like just focus on the things that we know are good and we know are what he has for us. And I did not do a great job in that season, I don't think, of actually doing the soul work too well. Like I look in hindsight right now, and it probably took me, you look at that whole swath of time, probably 3 or 4 years of just not wanting to let go of my dreams. And when I finally did, I discovered that, and again, so cliche, like these are all things that smarter people than I have said a long time ago. So, but just the idea that it's actually so good. Like what God has for me in this journey is better than what I've been avoiding my whole life. It's better than what I could have envisioned for my life. But it took me the better part of 5 years to get.
So from my experience too with you, I was going through some of those similar dark times and frustrations in college, and you were the anchor to help me pull me back to the scripture, right? And pull me into that and leading me through that and through one of the major impacts, guys, that Bernt's made in my life. He helped marry myself and my beautiful bride, Mary, walk us through some counseling before, and realized he's like, I approve you guys got it. You can figure it out. And now we're 11 years in, which is amazing.
For the record, I don't know how Spencer hooked this one, but he better hang on to that for the rest of his life.
We married up in multiple categories.
Yes, we did.
If not all of them. So with that, like you were my person that helped me through that time, right? Was there another guy or another person that did that in that 3-4 seasons that you were still like, hey, soul searching and like redirecting you consistently?
Yeah, there were probably 3. I had 3 or 4 voices in my life. Again, who were really, really influential. Some of them not so much because I would call them and process, but more like memories and encounters with people along the way that I was like, oh, wow. So my dad, like he's a great guy, and he's been through a lot of heartache and change in his life that he's seen, and then shifting. He's been through seasons when God shifted what his expectations and his dreams. And so his words were significant in those seasons. But the thing is, like the way he would do it though was like he would sort of call me back to the stuff that really matters. So is the stuff that really matters going okay? Yeah, they're great. So remind me again what we're fussing about. Like, so he was really helpful. Larry Mercer, Dr. Larry Mercer, I had the privilege of working for him for a few years, and like there were so many things that he would say and repeat when I worked for him that 5-6 years later I was like,
That makes sense.
Whoa, that's really cool. So he deposited so much wisdom in my life. Jim Shupe's another one. Like another guy who I watched navigate really painful seasons, and somehow he, in this particular case, he walked through the season of the death of a child. And I watched him say, "The Lord takes, and the Lord gives, and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." And there were people that heard him, and I was in the room with people who heard him, and they said, "That's fake. I'm out of here." Right? Never came back. And I just remember I knew him well enough that I was like, it's actually not fake. There are things in life. I mean, life will just kick you in the teeth. There's no question about it. But this guy, so I think, walking that with him was really influential. When I'm walking dark chapters going, the Lord does give. The Lord does take away. Like, am I really okay? Is Jesus really enough for me? All things I would say, but turns out not always believe. And then a friend of mine, Dave Vance, is another name. He was pastoring for years, and he would just be so gracious, listen to me, pray with me. So just sort of walking the journey. So there was about 4 people that way, and I can't leave Babes out. I mean, that was like the daily grind, and she and I working that through, and our Better Not Bitter campaign, and which ultimately, fast forward another 4 years, led us to a deepening of the gospel in our lives. We had been trying to live. My wife is holier than I am, so I'll just talk about me. I had been trying to live gospel light in my life. So one way of thinking about all of this is like, I like what Jesus is going to do for me when I die. I just want control of my life now. Right? So I'm just going to live with sort of a lighter idea of the gospel in my life. I don't really want him to mess with my plans. And so releasing some of that, learning to release some of that, discovering that his gospel work in my life was even greater. So at that time, 5 years into so let's just say I got over or worked through or released some of my grumpiness 5-6 years into all that. Now I'd been at the church for 8 years, which terrible idea. And then the guy that hired me is like, I'm going to retire.
I remember
and I was
that
like, and I'll tell you what, man. And so the leadership stepped in and they said, "Hey, King, would you step into some of his roles in a transition role while we do a search?" Yeah. And in my mind, 100%, this was God releasing me and returning me to education. Like I could have, if I were a betting man, I would have bet all the chips on it. And so we're like a year or half a year into that transition year. And someone's like, "Hey, you were nominated for the role." And I was like,
I didn't apply. What are you talking about?
That sounds like a terrible idea. Absolutely terrible idea. And it led to some really funny interviews. I was in one where they were like, "Well, tell us, when you felt the Lord, when did you decide you wanted to become the pastor of the church?" And I said, "I don't." Then don't get me wrong. Like if this is what Jesus has for us, like I'm all in. But if you're asking me when I popped my head off the pillow and thought this was a good idea, I don't. So, that was awkward.
Man, wouldn't that be great? Going to a job. No, I don't know if I want this job, but
I don't know what they sent.
I don't think that would work in the real world. But obviously, worked for you. God had some plans.
The thing was, like, I mean it. Like I think about, and I live in this perpetual state of I am not qualified to be here. Not qualified in the sense of sin in my life. I'm not a perfect person. I need Jesus every day. Like that part's clear. I just never thought of myself of doing this. And because church and Western church just seriously, like it's chewed up and spit out better men than I. And so I live in this space. I'm like, guys, again, if you discern this is what God has, like I will seriously consider. Anyway, they came back and they were like, no, we think this is where the lady Jinder and I prayed it through. We said, we'll step into this. I had a level of confirmation in that process. Got all of that went through. And then I got the phone call on March 13th of 2020 saying, "We are excited to announce that we believe you're the next lead pastor of this church." We joyfully accepted that with a level of excitement, but reality of maybe the way Moses would have responded to going back to Egypt. And then 2 days later, the governor shut everything down for COVID because that was March 15th of 2020. Those dates are permanently etched in my mind. Okay. And so my first Sunday here, there were 4 people, somebody in a tech booth, somebody in the back corner, somebody, it was a weird day. So there's so many other things that we could talk about and all of that, but that's sort of been our ongoing, the discovery has been that God's work and plan for my life and in whatever roles of leadership he has for me. Turns out I really am coming to accept and grow and love in the idea that he is better at it than I am. He's better at directing my paths than I am.
Yeah, I think the coolest thing, and hopefully when this does go live, is one of the things that I think takes and makes a great leader. I mean, there's good leaders out there. Is not only obviously God using that individual, but ultimately like the person's humility in it, and them. And you said it in a funny way, but you just not even wanting to be there or not like expecting it. And I think that's what also you taught me as a leader. There was multiple frustrations that people have told me, even in high school, like, hey, you're a natural leader. You need to step up into roles, da da da. And anytime that I wanted to be a lead of something, it never happened, right? Starting with my wonderful 3-year application process to be an RA, right? And frustration out of wazoo is like, why, Lord? Like, you literally, like, everyone follows me around this campus. Like, why can't I be an RA, right? And wasn't a star athlete, wasn't a captain, wasn't whatever you want to call it for any sports, but people would naturally be drawn to me. And so even going into my professional career, you and I discussed, and that thought was funny. He's like, I ended up moving down to Northern Virginia and you left from it, and coming down to, you and I talked of like, I felt the Lord being pulled to come to this Christian high school and didn't know what the heck I was doing, but being an athletic director, a teacher, a coach, and working 60 plus hours. And the Lord used that to find my bride on Christian Mingle, because I wasn't going to find it in my church at the time. And being there, I'm like, this is what the Lord wants me, but I'm loving what I'm doing, but I'm not enjoying the politics of it all, which you know, you go through that or went through that. And the Lord's like, hey, I said, hey, Lord, you're calling me to leave. I'm leaving. So I'm leaving the school, but nothing aligned. And I was just like you, and like for a year figuring out, actually a year and a half, picking up side gigs, coaching gigs for sports. Luckily, like I said, I married up. My wife had a job at that point, and she had just finished her master's. And so I then went and started pursuing my master's just to keep myself busy, but rough season. You walked me through it big time, and we still literally, I didn't have a job, and we get pregnant. And that was also humbling, because I'm supposed to be the man of the house, bringing in this money to lead my wife through it all. And I'm like, okay, Lord, well, let's keep going. And finally, 3 months after having Charlie, still didn't have a job, and Mary's about to go back to work, and Lord gets me a job in the government, local government in Loudon.
Yeah.
And literally, we joke about it now, but her first day back was my first day of dropping my son off so that I could go to work. That my cousin, or no, yeah, my cousins or sister-in-laws and cousins were watching my son for that season. Whew, the Lord just drastically uses the time that you think is never going to happen and put people in your life. I love and I'm going to start doing it with my wife now, this bitter and better campaign. I like this idea.
Yeah, better not bitter.
Better not bitter. Okay, better not bitter. Okay. And because that's like game changing in the thought process, because like I laughed because you and I in the season of college and right after, I was huge and still am, but pulled back a little bit. But strengths and weaknesses, and using strengths finders at the time, and in college, which I find it funny now thinking back, my top strength was positivity, right? Yeah. And then I've taken it now 3 times for work experiences. Positivity has not popped that back in the top 5.
That's funny.
Now other things are in there, but that were still the same in college. But the aspect of, hey, the better not bitter campaign, I like that a lot.
Yeah, it was something the Lord used in our lives for sure. The other part, there's lots of different ways to think about and process even our journey to get here. Like you mentioned, humility. There was so much humble pie in releasing our expectations, right? I mean, I'm the guy. I mean, I would have told you I'm not big on titles. I just want to serve people. And yet when they're taken from you, you go, whoa, 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 what's going on here? And it's just that humble pie process. I didn't mention this, but just quickly, when I was coming out of the tobacco field, and the church offered me so I finished my education, and the Lord was gracious enough to allow me to finish my doctorate. I finished right in the middle of tobacco season. So I just remember this moment of like, these Amish guys that I'm working with took an extra tea break or something and said, yeah, King finished his education. All right, let's get back to it. And I was just like, dude, this is so humbling. It doesn't, like, all this stuff I've been working towards, and it just felt like none of it mattered. Not a lick of it mattered. And it was just humbling. And so I went from there. I finished the season, the harvest season. And then I get this offer to come on staff at a church as a worship leader. Well, the school that I had graduated from went 2 years prior. It was like an unspoken pecking order. If you're going to go into translation work, or you're going to be the pastor teaching, a book writer, something like that, like you were the upper echelon. If you're going to teach Bible, maybe at a Christian school or something like that, like you weren't far behind, but you were in there. You were still considered one of the cool kids. If you were in like the counseling program, it was like, well, but you guys really care about people. We need you. We love you. Like you're here. If you were like a youth pastor, you guys are like the fringe. You're kind of crazy. You kind of like it that way anyway, so it's fine. If you were a worship guy, like you weren't even really on anybody's radar screen. So like here I've been to school, I've done graduated, I had this brilliant plan that everybody would think, ooh, and then at the end of the day, I end up becoming a worship guy. There was so much humble pie in just going, actually, King, you need to relax your bones and step into what I have for you. And so I just think, so I say all that to say, like, calling sometimes I think very differently about calling these days than I did then. But I also I tell people now when they want to come talk to me about a hard season in their life, or they want to sit down, I feel the need to tell them, before you tell me anything, let me just tell you this much of my story. God ripped my dreams out of my life and replaced them with something that truthfully I've been fearing and avoiding. Honestly, it's a lack of faith in my life that Jesus would be sufficient for me in that journey, but that what he is doing is so much better than what I could have envisioned for my life. So if your hardship is one where you want to talk to someone who's going to help you hang on to your hopes and dreams, I am not your guy, because I'm going to probably, everything in me is going to be like, please let go. What Jesus wants to do is so much better.
No, I think one of the people several people that I've supervised make it funny to me is the guy stated, like, I want to lead one as a Christian. And then obviously the impacts of my family is important with my wife. And then my kids having four. People still think I'm crazy in the position I'm at, and have four children, 9, almost 8 now, Bernt, almost 6 and almost 4. It's crazy. Birthday's coming up, bang, 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 the other 3.
Yeah, we talked about this the other day. How old are you? Can I ask you that?
Yeah, I'm 36.
Yeah, you were how old I was when we met. That's the crazy part right now.
That is crazy. And now I've got 4 kids and copying
And now
you.
you have 4 kids. Yeah.
I'm just copying you,
Yeah,
and you've got no kids in the house now, right?
No, it's weird.
You've got no kids, and how many of them are married or almost married now? Because we got
3 of the 4. It's weird.
Sheesh.
Bro, I got a grandchild.
Yeah, you're getting old.
There's a lot of gray in here.
Yeah, same. My wife pointed it out the other day. So I got some coming on the hair and the beard.
Just pointed it out.
So she's like, yeah, you're getting a little. She's also like, hey, when you're doing this podcast, make sure you don't like look down, because you're starting to go a little thin up top. I was like, but no, I think that's what is also hard. And I was mentioning this to my counselor of like, we as men specifically, but leaders in general, like we lead outside of our 4 walls in our house, right, on a regular. And then we come home, and unfortunately, just because we're drained, they get the sort of leftovers, right, in the world perspective. And it's so wrongly written, because that's not essentially what we should be doing. And going through all of that time, like, it was really cool. And there's something that obviously my kids are going to be slightly, when you would invite me over when I was in college, and we'd have game nights, and I would go to some of your kids' games and different perspectives, and being able to build relationships there. And it was really cool to get a text from your daughter this week saying that she's engaged, which was super cool, and awesome for her and for you guys. Not necessarily awesome for your pocket, but that's okay. I'm just thankful I only have 1 girl compared to your 3. Mentioned that this week with some of my friends and Mary. But it's interesting to see how hard it is. I feel like it's easier to lead people outside of your house. Number one. And I think that's one of the questions that I'm going to ask you too, is like leading, because us as a believer, and as a father, and then as a husband, and in our jobs, like the leadership skills and needs. Like, one of the questions I'm going to have, and this can go in any of these categories, because we're responsible biblically to lead in all of them. What would you say is some of the biggest mistakes you made as a leader? What did you do about it? And then what did you learn from it? How'd you learn from it?
Well, my biggest mistakes, I think, came, at least the ones that are popping into my head, the biggest mistakes that I made as a husband and father were in the early seasons where like dates weren't happening, I'm late to birthday parties, I'm just getting lost in and those things are all like, I own those. Those are there. We could probably, you could talk about those in a variety of ways. They're very, very clearly evidences of the shadow sides of the things that the Lord has allowed me to do. But and I think, so those are the biggest mistakes that jump to mind in that process. And what was the other part of your question?
Like what? So and some of this is your career path, right? But what did you end
Yeah.
up doing about it with your interaction with your wife, with your kids? Obviously, you said
Yeah.
sorry, but did they see a change at some point? Like, how were you able to flip it?
Yeah, so I think when so nothing went the way we thought it was going to go, right? But even when the job opportunity came, the semester that you and I met when you were in college, it was okay. Here's an opportunity the Lord's giving us. We've been praying for this. There's lots about it that we don't understand, like the location doesn't make sense, maybe the nature of the work, like whatever. But we think it's an answer to the prayers that we've been putting up, and so the courage to take that step and make that move. It was a tough move for the kids. It was tough for us. For the first time in a long time, we sat that the first Thanksgiving we were by ourselves, just staring at the walls, going, "Huh, look at this." But it addressed the things that were coming apart, right? And so God graciously provided us, and so maybe the courage to step into that. And then once we were in that, it was like, wow, this is really good. Now, if we're not careful, it's not like we're not going to revert to previous patterns. And so along the way, the Lord's been gracious enough to, again, like things like, for example, and I know this isn't true in everybody's experience, but I wanted to make it true in ours. So the truth is, you come on staff at a church and you are your own worst enemy, right? Because there's always needs, there's always people, and there's always things to do. Music, right? When is it good enough that it can be performed for the God of the universe? Like, you could rehearse forever and there's always more rehearsing that could be done. Or when you're preparing a message or whatever, like, when is it good enough? I'm not perfect. I don't pretend to be. I need Jesus on clear ways. Like, he is such good news for me in this process. But I committed to the idea that, okay, my balance with my wife is good. My balance with my kids is good. We've got to keep it that way. And I have to so I made a commitment pretty early on. And again, work at a church, so I do have flexibility. I got to make sure I'm at every game. And because I can, like, there's no, unless they have games on a Wednesday night, which is when we normally did our rehearsals for music, like, there's no reason I can't be there. Like, and so I'm just going to schedule everything else around that, or the dates with my wife. Like, there's no reason I can't make this happen because I have the flexibility. And so I started actually, I would seed it in language I would use when I was around my kids or I was around my wife, where I'm saying things like, man, I'm glad I work at a church because I get to come to your game. I'm glad I work at a church because I'm going to reschedule my life tomorrow and we're going to take the day and we're going to be able to go do blah, 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 blah. So my heart was that, because I've been around, and again, I've been around church folk for my whole life. I've been around a lot of those things where, like, dads were absent because they worked at a church, and it's not just church, like, it's just work in general, whatever.
Church
So just saying,
more.
like,
Anytime you're serving people, right? Anytime you're with people.
like the need is always greater than we are. We have a tendency to own more than we should, and not trust that Jesus is going to be in those things, like, whatever. So just saying, like, hey, and it takes courage to do that, to say, we're going to make this move because we think this is going to address the bigger issue that we were trying to wrestle through, or I'm going to make the space for my kids and my wife because I can and I need to. So I don't know if that answers your question in terms of, like, how do you, but those were things that became really important. Communication became so important between Babes and I. Like, I need her to speak. Like, she sees it before I do, right? And you'd like to think that as I mature, that I'll see it earlier. Like, my blind spots are still my blind spots. It's part of the reason why I need Jesus so much, and it's part of the reason why she's in my life. Like, I need you to speak it. If you see me heading for a cliff, you need to speak it. And so she's been great. You know this, but she's great. That girl, she'll speak it. And I need her to, like, every time.
Yeah, like I said, and you said, I married up too because my wife will speak it too.
Yeah.
So I got called this week. Hey, I need you to do X, Y, Z. You're falling short here. And I'm like,
yeah. And we don't.
I want to hear it. No.
Yeah. And we don't need to go down this rabbit hole right now. But I am fully convinced at this season of my life that, yes, God holds me accountable to be a leader in the church and a leader in our home. But it's not because I'm the better candidate. In fact, I'm probably the least qualified candidate for a bunch of this stuff. It
Sure.
doesn't mean I'm not accountable to step into the space, but it changes the way I do,
Hmm.
right? So instead of me walking in and be like, "Babe, I'm the man of the house. Here's what we're gonna do." Blah blah blah. It's like, what would you do? Could you? How can we pray together? Can you tell me what you see? Can you please speak? Like, I need you to speak. Like, if we're going to do this in a good way, like, this is not because my brain is bigger. It's not because whatever got the personality for it or whatever. Like, I don't. And so, could we please work together in this process? It's been so life giving. So yeah. So
Well,
that communication is
I
really
think
important.
it's cool. As we're coming closer to the end here, but as um, your marriage is very similar to mine
Mm.
in the aspect of like we definitely 100% married up. That's not even a
Yeah, yeah.
question. Number two, the the way our wives process
Mm.
and the skills and the
Mm.
things they have that the gifts God's given them. Um, we've seen it not only for in our marriage and how they take care of our kids, even though half the time they're frustrated with them. The like you did it probably around this similar season two where you talked with Ginger to basically be like, hey, like what do you want to do? Because the kids are going to be going out of the house. Like, how do we process that? And now she's got an awesome career, right? We just started that season as I was texting you a couple weeks ago. My wife just started seminary to be a counselor,
Yeah,
licensed counselor,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And she's in school now and raising our four kids and maintaining the house, which is insane. Just processing that, right? Have her having basically three jobs. A fourth maintaining my sanity and making sure I stay on the right path. But yeah, like it's humbling because as a quote unquote the lead of the house, which is like you said, definitely not the way I feel it, even though people say it is, but like God brought our spouses in our lives at the right times and the perfect match for us to be able to help us be better husbands, fathers, leaders, men of the world, and guide us in everything, right? And we lead, quote unquote, but like you said, not I wouldn't have picked myself if you put both in the room, like, but it God balances it out. Like she even says, like she is such a as even today she's going out with a friend for lunch just to be for that friend and be a listener. And she's just a strong listener. And she doesn't see that gift all the time. And when we go to a couple's date or whatever it may be, and she's like, "You're just so natural at making people feel comfortable." And I'm like, "Do you understand what you do on a daily basis?" Like, and
Yeah.
being able to lead them that way, because they want to hear that. They want to hear that too. And obviously, different people. And we've talked another sidetrack note later, like of the love languages. Like they like hearing it too, right?
Sure.
But yeah, it's sort of a lot of things of you've said in this podcast has been awesome. We're gonna sort of end on this note though. If you had, since you are a leader, 100%, even though you don't agree with that statement, what is one piece of advice if someone would come up to you, say, "Hey, I'm in charge of my family. I'm in charge of this business. I'm in charge of whatever. How can I become a better supervisor with leading these people?" What would you state to them?
Well,
The loaded question.
it is a loaded question. I think one way of thinking about leadership is that I think all of us we live in a broken world and we live with our own brokenness in so many levels and in so many ways. And I think all of us, whether you're a follower of Jesus or not, I think all of us are generally grasping for the stuff that's going to work. Right. And so we look around and we latch on to people and we would call them leaders in the hopes that whatever it is they're doing that works for them will work for you. Another way of saying all of this is that at the very core of who I am, like what I'm following, other people are watching to say, well, is what you're following going to work for me? Right. And so I just say for any leader in any role, like doing the hard work, the soul work that says, what am I actually following? Like if you want to be a good leader, you've locked into what you're following. I mean, for me, a lot of that starts with Jesus, right? So that speaks to because I'm following Jesus, hopefully people see more of him in me, which means things like faithfulness and integrity and patience and those kinds of things, the fruit of his spirit in my life, that people would see love and joy and peace and all those things. because fundamentally that's what I'm following. And to whatever degree leadership comes out of my life, it's me saying, come on, like follow with me. Let's do this.
Yeah.
But sometimes it boils down to other things. Like you can be following the mission of the organization that you're leading. And you're essentially telling people, like, come do this with me. Like, let's follow this mission together, see where it takes us. And so I would just say, pay attention to what you're following. The minute that breaks down, so once I discover that you're following something that I didn't know or don't subscribe to or don't whatever, the literature would maybe call it shadow missions. Once I discover some shadow mission in your life, I'm out. So this is why when you have a moral failure by a pastor of a church of any kind, well, what are you actually following? I thought you were following Jesus. Now it looks like you're following passions and desires. I'm out. So I just think whether you're in a faith context or not, like just doing the hard work of saying, what am I following here? And even if you're not a follower of Jesus, like maybe you're committed to the mission of the organization, right? That's what I'm following. Great. Like just be super clear on that. Have integrity. Speak to the fact that that's what we're following. Not a bigger salary, not a bigger title, not a bigger office, not a bigger, because the minute people sense that in you, like I'm done. So I just think the leadership principles of like paying attention to what you're following, I think a lot in life sorts out.
Well, one of the principles that you just said that has impacted me throughout my career because of how you lead is the key word that you just said was with, right? A lot of people don't say, come with me. They say, come behind me. I'll take the sword. And that's one big factor that people have even mentioned to me of like, you share the vision. You want us to come with you. You're with us next to shoulder. And that's not only how you've led your church and when I was under you and with you in college of just that aspect. And I've noticed it too from afar, even as you lead with Ginger and with your kids, like they know that you're their biggest cheerleader and you're not trying to get something out of it for yourself, right? And that you're leading obviously from the gospel first. Like that's what Jesus states, like, come with me. Right. And so, no, I mean, that's golden nugget right at there at the end.
Take it. Roman, and look, I would say too, like, I don't do it perfectly. Like there's all kinds of moments when you go, well, I got to check my heart here. Like I'm heading in a bad direction. And so I do think that, as people, we're always, I don't know, we live with a level of like, I don't know, our hearts are idol factories, theologians in the past would say. And so it's not like it's, well, good, I got that worked out of my life. I never have to think about this again. Nah, this business of what I'm following is a daily thing. I turn to rest. Okay, I get to do this project. That means I'm going to rest today. Jesus is rest. What do you mean your project's rest? Like get your head out of your whatever. So just trying to like be like, no, what am I following? And how do I, I'm not saying projects are bad. I'm just saying like sometimes
you and I both. We love our projects.
We make good things God things. That's how that works, I guess.
No. Thank you, Bernt. Thank you for this awesome conversation. One, you and I need to have a phone call even outside of this.
Yeah, sure.
But wanted to huge thank you for Bernt for coming on and sharing the stories, sharing where the Lord's taken you and how leadership has impacted you in how God's led through your life and with you. I really do appreciate taking the time on my first episode here.
Dude, mine too. My first episode, so this is great.
Yeah. So again, the why factor, leadership unlocked. It's all what it's about is bringing people in, having conversations. And if you have any other ideas for me, Bernt, I would love to, or people to bring on. I'd love to have conversations. I think it's an awesome opportunity for people to talk and listen and have conversations about leadership because I don't think it actually happens as often as people think. It's a lot of top-down mentality, not necessarily people that are really grinding and need direction and support. For everyone listening, I hope you took something away from today's chat, whether it's a new idea, a bit of inspiration, or just a reminder that leadership isn't about being perfect, right? It's about showing up, learning, helping others along the way. And if you enjoyed this episode, when it comes live, follow me.
Can I say real quick?
Yeah, please.
Like for anybody out there that's in that dark soul tonight, like trying to work through it, can I just say Jesus is better? Would you take steps towards him and would you make him a part of a Better Not Bitter campaign? Because no one else is going to do it for you. And just please don't take as long as I did to get there. It really, on the back end of some of these things, like God has done some phenomenal miracles in my life, and I'm just so grateful. And I just am embarrassed about the amount of time it took me to get to the place where I'm actually like, oh, Jesus actually is better. So anyway, thanks.
No, I mean, with that note though, and this is my wife and I prayed before we went on today, Bernt, and just like this is a podcast that we want to be led by him and not of myself. And so really, if people are going through whatever they're going through, like don't hesitate to reach out. Not that I'm the answer, because the Lord's the answer, but being someone that we can connect people with that need direction and support towards the gospel. So
Amen.
spread it. Happy to be a listener. We've got some awesome guests coming up as well as I try to load up on the front end of these podcasts before it starts rolling on a regular. But again, know your why and lead with a purpose. And I'll end it on that. So thank you, Bernt, for coming on. Again, huge impact on my life, and I'm glad that you were able to take some time out of your life and jump on a podcast for the first time.
All good, man. You've impacted me as well. I'm grateful for you, Spence. Appreciate you much.
Absolutely.